So we are going to begin now because we expect a lot more people to join us later. We have only 36 people at the moment, but I'm sure another 36 will join us. So in the meantime, can you just mute your microphone because we get these distracting background noise, and the icon with the microphone is on the left bottom of your screen. Just mute it, and then we are going to begin officially. You unmute it when you have to say something. Okay, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the third in the series on Guyana, and this is the first time that we have three presenters who are at the moment in Guyana. And this is also the first time that we are hosting this meeting in Tobago. Our team is in Tobago, sister island of Trinidad and Tobago. And as you can see with the technology, you can operate from any location. There are no boundaries again. So this is a weekly forum hosted by ICDN, Indo-Caribbean Diaspora News. It's a free online paper dedicated to highlighting issues, events, and people in the Indian diaspora in the Caribbean, and from an Indian perspective. You are free to write for the paper. It's online. We don't produce any hard copies. You can send letters and so on, or articles, not more than 800 words. So we welcome all of you who have the talent to write, and we can also accommodate and share photos and videos. So this forum is held every Sunday at 7:30 Trinidad time on a variety of current topics. We deal with hot topics. And I know the time is inconvenient for some people who live in different parts of the world, but this is unavoidable. We are based in Trinidad, and this is the day and time that is most convenient to us here. Please unmute your phone again. I'm hearing a background noise. Somebody has the mic on. If I can detect the person, I will unmute. I will mute. Okay. So to continue now, this meeting is being streamed live on Facebook, our Facebook page, and it's being recorded. Later, we are going to edit the video, and we are going to upload it to YouTube, so it's there for posterity and reference and so on for researchers and writers. The format is like a, so let me pause again to see who I can unmute. Who I can mute, sorry. Who is that? Colin, is there Colin? Okay, you are muted. Ashraj, is it you? You have to mute your mic. Right, so we continue, but I'm getting a background noise from somebody. Tara, it may be you. Yes, Tara. Okay, so the format is going to be like a panel discussion. Each speaker will take 7 minutes, and you should time yourself because I have so many things to do here. I have to admit people and take notes and all of that. And then when all of them have spoken for 7 minutes, the floor will be open for brief questions, comments, and contributions. All of you, when you are talking, it is only then you should unmute your mic. And we hope to end at 9 p.m. or soon afterwards. So the program is usually about an hour and a half long. So let me introduce the first speaker, Dr. TURHAN DOERGA. And you'd observe that he has a very unique name. And that is because I think his mother is Guyanese and his father is from Suriname. So he's a true Caribbean man. He is a consultant and advisor as in the board of directors of Alice Rice. So he's an international consultant on rice and industry and business and so on trade. So let's welcome Dr. Durga. So you can begin speaking and everybody else would mute his or her mic. 7 minutes long.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me on your show. Let us start with what is the situation today in Guyana. Well, today we saw the ongoing attempts to create chaos, but there's a big difference with 10, 15 years ago. It's not catching on. Uh, Everybody knows when we speak about playing the black card. For too long, that has been going on. And I want to alert and ask everybody, because if we want to move forward, we have to be honest with each other, especially in Guyana, and look at this other in the eyes and speak the truth. For 28 years, Burnham has been in power, and everybody knows that you cannot talk about Black Lives Count, because as it is defined in America, because in Guyana for 28 years Burnham had total power with backing from the Western world, because Jagan was considered a communist. So by 1988, when I came to Guyana as a consultant, I saw the dire poverty and the misery and so forth. So you cannot say that, uh, to put it bluntly, black people have been marginalized by other ethnic groups. If they are marginalized, they have been marginalized by their own people. And it's a pattern we have seen in Africa, where the white elite left, the black elite took over, and basically colonized their own people. So in 1994, or I have to go one step back, Hoyt saw the light, and he had no choice, in my opinion, because Guyana at that time, 1985, when Burnham died, had become the poorest nation in this hemisphere. Hoyt took the bold step after, I guess, he saw the light, and he made some dramatic changes. He opened up the country again, and Guyana started to prosper again after the IMF had reorganized their debt and gave them to the tune of 770 million US dollars to put up a recovery program. So everything went well, especially in the rice sector, where in 2 years or 3 years it was taken from 25,000 tons to 180,000 ton exports, and today over 500,000 tons. Fast forward, by 2015, people like myself felt that the PPP became complacent, and we supported the APNU AFC on their platform to bring change. I want to stick a point there, because no racial party or race-based party can win an election anymore in there. If you look at PPP, some people say 35, 37, 40%, PNC 28, 30, 35%. So it is the middle group, which is of all races and all ethnicity, who decide what is happening in Guyana, or who gets a mandate to run this beautiful country. So in 2015, the APNU, which was basically PNC and the AFC, they got a mandate, and by no means we had expected, especially Granger, to go back to the Burnham situation. From day one, I must tell you that 2 weeks into their governing, we were saddened to see how they forgot what they had promised and what they had promised to do. They went back, straight back to the Burnham Doctrine. And today, and I'm saying it without fear, because nobody can say that TURHAN DOERGA is a racist. My family has all colors of the rainbow. Every black person in this country know that I treat black people, Indian people, Amerindian, and everything in between equally. So without fear, I say today, you go to any government office, you look at any government program, and you will think that only Afro-Guyanese live in this country. So what happened with the promises made in 2015 of all inclusiveness and so forth? So bottom line is we have been royally fooled by Granger and his cabal. The same things he had accused the PPP of, and the, the, the slate he run on were dumped in the garbage bin. And 2020, they run on a manifesto where they said that 400 black men were killed and black people were marginalized. Well, I took offense to that for one simple reason, is that anybody can Google today, and Stabrook News made it their duty to publish it, that 400 black people killed is a blatant lie. The other thing is that black people were marginalized. I repeat my question. If black people are marginalized, they have been marginalized by their own, because the black elite basically taught, and these relics we have with Granger, all of them apparently still think that Idi Amin is alive, if you see the way they behave. So 2020, the electorate voted them out with a vast majority. They voted the other side in. They voted the PPP in because the PPP was much smarter than them. I'm convinced that the PPP has redeemed itself. They have diversified the whole party. All ethnic groups are in it. All religions are in it. And for me, yes, in every party, you have all kind of people. They have squibbling and this and the other. But in the end, they pulled it off, and a majority of Guyana gave them a mandate. So what we see today is that the PNC, because basically it's the PNC, the Nagamutu and Ramjatan and so forth are tokens. Just like the PNC had tokens in the past, they have them as tokens today. What we see is these guys, no matter what, they're holding on to power. They're now holding on to all kind of straws. And everybody should know that the calm we have today is because the PPP has shown leadership. I was quite impressed that when the recount was done, that Dr. Irfan Ali himself came to the smaller parties and thanked them for the support. What a contrast with the APNU. When they won the election, they just forgot everybody. He came and he thanks them for their support, and he pledged that there will be inclusiveness. So in conclusion, I want to say, this sharing of the corn which they're now preaching, that's nonsense. The narrative has changed. We don't have a racial problem in this country anymore. The racism is being peddled by the PNC. They're trying to play the race card, but it's dead. And why do I say it's dead today? Because they try and they try and they try to mobilize their people. Even today, we went to see at Buxton, we went to see at Agricola. Those people just came for the food and the drink. And in 15, 20 minutes, they walk 3-4 times, 20, 15, 20 people, and they're done with them. So we catch them and we ask them that, because they know me. And I asked, I thought you guys would come out in your numbers. They were very clear. They said, this nonsense ain't feeding us, and we're done with this black people thing. You understand? We're going to vote for people who take care of our business. So things have changed in Guyana. We don't have a racial problem. If you see racialism, as in any other country, it's pockets, and it's being peddled by this criminal cabal of the APNU+AFC, which think they can use it again to mobilize people, born and loot, and stay in power. But let me assure the audience here, from what I see in the ground, it is not going to happen, because people are fed up. Their own constituency, their own people are fed up. So the few hooligans which we still see, you understand, is just that, hooligans. So we're patiently waiting, as Dr. Irfan Ali today called again on all social media and all television stations to be calm. According to our constitution, the chairman of GECOM has to give 2 times 24 hours that will expire tomorrow 11 o'clock. And after that, quorum is the is 4 people in GECOM, and they can declare the PPP the winner, and we can move on with Guyana. Of course, today the PNC already launched that the president can fire Mr. Singh and declare a state of emergency and so forth. From this point, I want to thank, and from where I sit, I want to thank the Guyanese diaspora and all the other people in the world, the CARICOM, everybody, for supporting democracy in Guyana. And let me assure you, Guyanese are wide awake. We're not going back to the Burnham days. Having said that, thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Durga. And Dr. Durga will come back later, I am sure, in the Q&A to address the question of what do we do if Granger does not step down? What is the way forward, despite probably the ruling of GECOM? So we move now to Joel BHAGWANDIN, a young and upcoming star who is a lecturer, a columnist, consultant, and so on, and he writes for one of the daily newspaper and so on. He's going to talk for 7 minutes, like Dr. Durga, and I'm sure he's going to address how do we move forward. We don't want much recapturing of the history. We all know the history. How do we move forward? What's the road ahead? Welcome, Joel.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me on your program. Well, the topic of your show is the political crisis, and where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? It's simple in theory. So permit me to comment briefly on how did we arrive where we at from a different dimension from where my senior Dr. Durga presented, and where we arrive at today stem from the no confidence motion which was passed in December 2018. And what we have seen since December 2018, there was a lot of maneuverings and engineering of legal tactics and all these sort of thing to go to the court and to prove 33 is not greater than 32 and 34, and this whole mathematical nonsense. And the thing that I want to point out here, that the electoral law in Guyana provides for at least, if I'm not mistaken, 3 circumstances under which elections are to be held. And in all 3 situations, it contemplates that the Elections Commission should at all times be ready to hold an elections within 3 months. One situation is where the election is due constitutionally after 5 years. The other situation is if there is a snap election like in 2015. And the other situation is for a no confidence motion. All 3 situations, if you check our laws, it contemplates for elections to be held within 3 months. And of course, when the drafters of that piece of legislation did that, they would have taken into consideration the operational and the procedural aspect of GECOM in terms of what it takes to hold an election. And so fast forward to today, we have had elections on March the 2nd, we've had a national recount, and yet despite almost the entire world and the Caribbean and everybody, only one group of people and one political party refuse to accept the result. And they, ironically, barefacedly, are making the claims that the opposition are claiming that the election was marred with fraud, something, their fraud that they're alleging, there is no evidence to prove it of dead people voting and migrated people voting. In fact, what I could say what I would say at this forum is that I was actually involved in the process of the recount, not physically at the center, but behind the scenes, where we I was doing some analytical works behind the scene, and I have in my possession actually all of the observation reports um, that originate from that recount. And there is a stark contrast in the numbers that they're claiming and the actual numbers that were confirmed, TIC, for example. And then that's a whole different matter altogether. So, and then we've seen that all the people who they claim are there, these people came out. Even a very reputable lawyer was on the list, Devendra Kisoon, right? So the fraud that they're alleging, there is no evidence for it. And the fraud that has been alleged by the other side has been proven vis-a-vis the recount. Now, it will take a special kind of idiotic mind to not be able to see and to process objectively. But what has happened, and I will put this differently, is that, you know, for many years, politicians have exploited the level of intelligence of our people, the level of education of people. And so that has been the problem here when we talk about they're playing the race card. And these are unfortunate circumstances for Guyana, because coming to more into my field, the comment in my field, the economic situation of Guyana as a result of the political crisis we're in. So we've had an elections and then a global pandemic come and meet us. And we have seen absolutely no proper leadership or statesmanship or uh, prudence or competence, even so, to manage the pandemic. There was a national task force that was set up. But if you examine the national task force, it is not a national task force. National means it ought to be composed of stakeholders from every facet of society, civil society, the private sector, professionals, doctors, the private hospitals. And then you also need an economic unit to address the economic impacts. Nothing of this sort has been done. There is no leadership in that regard. And you have all this sector, all the economic sectors in Guyana have been affected, more so as a result of the closure of the airports. There is no traffic of people. So then the industry that is directly related to that aviation sector is the tourism and hospitality sector and the restaurant business and the entertainment business as a result of the restrictions. So nothing has been forthcoming. I've been looking closely at Trinidad, the way Trinidad handled their pandemic. Trinidad has a very well coordinated, a well thought plan. They have produced recently a roadmap of recovery, and that roadmap was developed by virtue of having a very wide stakeholder consultation. Everybody, every expertise, every skill, every sector were part of that consultation that put that document together. We have nothing of the sort here. We have nothing of the sort in Guyana. People are losing jobs. Industries, we have done an informal survey, and industries have been reporting over 60-70% decline in commercial activities. So where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? We need as a matter of urgency, absolute urgency, you need a legitimate, democratically elected government to be installed forthwith that is recognized to be legitimate by the international community. And the first thing on the agenda is to deal with the pandemic, to provide support, economic support to the unemployed people, not just giving hampers, but they need, Trinidad, what do you call it? The Guyanese NIS version in Trinidad. Is it Social Security?
Yeah,
Their
nice. Yeah.
Social Security agency has been paying a monthly check to persons who are unemployed. The insurance scheme in Guyana is even in a financial crisis of itself. It has always been in a financial crisis, rather. So where we go from here, we need that leadership. We need to constitute a truly national task force to deal with our pandemic. We are way behind compared to our sister countries, and I'll go right at Trinidad, for example, and Suriname. Suriname come and had an election after us, and they now are considered to be a stable environment. In fact, through my consulting firm, I have investors in Trinidad who have incorporated company in Guyana and are looking for business in the oil and gas industry in Guyana. And now they're seeking a strategy. When they thought that this political crisis would come to an end, the impasse would come to an end, we would have a government, I'm working with them to help them to do research and to inform their strategy going forward in Guyana. Now Guyana doesn't seem too promising. We're going to look at Suriname. Suriname is now stable. They have a stable government now. And so they're focusing their energy into Suriname. So what we don't know, what the ordinary people don't know on the ground, is that we're losing a lot of opportunities. We're losing investors who are going to other countries because of the situation in Ghana, and the politicians don't care. Right? The politicians don't care. So that is my contribution in terms of where we go. We need to quickly conclude the elections, and we need to quickly compose a national task force to address all these economic problems, because they would lead to social problems in society. They would lead to social crises as well. All right. So that is my contribution for now, and I'll be happy to be participating in the Q&A session.
Thank you. Thank you, Joel. And somebody has the microphone on, so we are picking up all kinds of distracting music. I'm giving you a warning. I'll remove you from the meeting if you don't fix that problem. I'm doing my best at my end to identify the culprit. Yes. So yes, wait. We haven't finished with all the speakers yet. So hold on. Trying to find the culprit with the noise, background noise. Okay. So we are going to Dr. Daniel GIBRAN now, who I am sure is going to focus on the politics and precisely what are the plans for us in Guyana if Granger does not step down. So he's going to talk for 7 minutes again, and we have had Professor GIBRAN last Sunday. He's a professor of international relations and intelligence studies, intelligence as in police work and military and so on. So he's a very knowledgeable person in a unique field. So over to you, Professor GIBRAN. Just let me. Yes, go ahead. Yes, Professor, unmute your mic. GIBRAN, Professor GIBRAN, unmute your mic.
Okay.
Yes, we are hearing you now. Go ahead.
Okay. Quickly to Mr. Joel BHAGWANDIN, when he quotes Trinidad and Tobago as an example of COVID success in the Caribbean. That is not true. He should look to Jamaica and see what Jamaica is doing. Jamaica is very far ahead of the rest of the Caribbean in the ways they have handled and continue to handle and respond to COVID-19. So let me move on. The issue on everyone's mind, I I see in the chat section, what do we do? Or what can very well happen if Granger continues to be defiant and to say that he is not going to step down. Now we need to bear in mind that he has the military and the police behind him. So he has hard power. And this nonsense about any other thing that the law and the Constitution and the court, we need to remember what Burnham did, as was pointed out by the very first speaker. David Granger has or is using Burnham's playbook. And he has learned a lot of lessons. I know him since 1966 when we both served in the Guyana Defense Force. So I know the man very well. He has surrounded himself with military. These are individuals who have lock-stitched themselves into a conceptual strategic straitjacket. And they find it extremely difficult to extricate themselves from that conceptual straitjacket, which, as I explained the last time. So let me say this, and I'm going to be very quick. Should Granger decide to defy whatever he should do, or GECOM's ruling, and he's not going anywhere. Bear in mind that we have the military and the
That's very disrespectful.
Somebody named Mayak, M-A-Y-A-K, is doing that.
Okay, I will continue now. So, if Granger remains recalcitrant and very defiant, what should be done? I don't think there's anything that can be done, except if someone in the United States, to bring it to the attention of Donald Trump, that if you try a military intervention in Guyana, you stand a very good chance of getting, oh, hi Michael, that you stand a very good chance of getting your numbers up. That is one of the things that that Donald Trump is very concerned about, his sagging full numbers right now. Now, there have been episodes in the past where things like this have happened. So this thing can take less than 3 hours for us to have a solution. There are US destroyers in Chaguaramas awaiting order of this nature. They sail down to Guyana off the coast. An Apache helicopter takes off with some leaflets and drop it over Georgetown alone. But before that happens, the US ambassador would have spoken to Granger and say, this is what the US is planning to do. They're going to remove you if you do not concede within 2 hours. You have 2 hours to concede. Don't give him much time. So he does not concede. So 2 Apache helicopters fly over Guyana and take out, I'm using diplomatic language here now, and just take out his residence or maybe his office. He doesn't concede. They take out within minutes the Camp Ayangana, which is the Guyana Defense Force headquarters and the PNC headquarters. And I'm sure by then he will understand that kind of language, because he, as an ex-military officer and has been in the military all his life, he understands the use of hard power, which is military power. So this guy and Harmon and the rest of them, they don't care about soft power and all that we are writing and saying and making pleas coming from different international quarters that we must do this, that we must do that, hoping that he would accede to what is being said. It goes through one ear and it comes out another ear. He's not going to respond. So the way forward is to remove him by military means. And that means it has to come from the United States. You can ask questions afterwards. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. And we move to our final speaker on the panel. It's RAVI DEV, who is well known, who has been on our panel for the last 2 occasions. So this is the 3rd time. Former Guyana Member of Parliament and Indian civil rights activist. Over to you, Ravi. Unmute your mic. Right, go ahead, Ravi.
Yeah, I'll try to move the discourse forward because the previous 3 speakers have put a lot on the plate. But I want to focus very back to a discussion and make it general in terms of the Indian Caribbean insertion of themselves into politics. I think what it displays is that we have a very poor grasp of politics. Politics is all about power. And one of our problems is that we do not concede that we are in a political crisis, and a political crisis demands a political situation. So to move on to the economic and to the health and other things, we're just missing the boat. We got to focus on the political crisis in which we are enmeshed. And this is not new. I don't want to go back into history, but just to put it on record, that what we are seeing playing out today, the script was written before, and the script was played out before, and the script will go on being played out while we are dancing around the subject. And what is that script? In 1990, we put on the agenda in Guyana that the Indian Caribbean constituents of the PPP, they have what we call an ethnic security dilemma, which is that even if their party, the PPP, were to accede into office through the ballot boxes, because they were a majority at that time, they will not be able to govern. It will be not the same thing when Jagan said between 57 and 64, the PPP would be in office but not in power. And why is that so? Because by 92, Mr. Burnham, being a political operator, a realist politic, a Machiavellian, he reinforced the basis of real power. Machiavelli never gave any credence to legitimacy back in his day, which was the people will like you, or in our day, the ballot boxes will put you into place. That's not what the PNC is all about. Raw power is what they were founded on, and raw power is what we see. Whereas invented the police force, the defense force, Guyana National Service, the People's Militia, the public service, and you name it what you built, including he flew the flag of the PNC over the appellate court. So what is different today? Why is it that Mr. Granger can do what he is doing? He can do it because he possesses real power, while all of us are running about the bush, pleading for some kind of moral suasion. Do the right thing, do the constitutional thing, do the legal thing. And yet we are surprised that whenever we do those things, we end up with the same situation where the PNC will find some legal fig leaf, and as a lawyer, there'll always be a fig leaf that you can find. So tomorrow, Claudette Singh will say, okay, we don't have a quorum, give me one more day, and there could be a quorum of 4, myself and the 3 PPP commissioners, and I will declare the results. The PNC will simply do what it has done all along, which is to take the matter to the court, to wit, and I said this 3 meetings ago, predicted what will happen here today, that they will say, well, the Constitution says that Claudette Singh must be advised by the CEO. And it's an arguable point. You and I can argue it and debate on this forum here, but it's of no use. It'll go to the courts. And as Burnham had done and Granger has done, there's a friendly court. Take, for example, Mr. Holder. We'll give him a hearing in the High Court. The appellate court will go over it. And here's a court that decided that 33 is not now, why did I say that Granger will keep it in the courts? He will keep it in the courts because he has figured that the Americans, and I agree with Dr. GIBRAN, we can all run around pleading and begging and going on our knees to do the right thing. It ain't gonna happen. He can only be removed by an outside force that can bring force to bear upon him. It happened in 1964 when Jagan was removed, the British applied force. It happened in 92 when he took a call from the White House to President Hoyt and he was removed. It happened again in 2015 when the Americans interceded, not so openly, but that's how the PPP was removed in 2015 by somebody putting their finger on the scale. It has to happen again. But they will not put the finger on the scale while Mr. Granger figures that they keep this legal fig leaf. He will keep it in the courts, hoping that the Americans don't want to be the big, ugly American as like the 60s, and to say, well, unless they do something egregious. So some people are saying they'll declare a state of emergency. He's not going to do that. Granger is not stupid. He may be, he doesn't think, but he remembers Burnham would never do that. He has the COVID pandemic, which gives him more power through Harmon than any state of emergency. He doesn't need that, and that would be a reason. We'll simply keep this in play. What can we do? I want to cut to the quick. Burnham once said to the PNC Congress, the same Congress where he said, prepare your will, and he said, our steel is sharper, and 6 months later, he assassinated Walter Rodney. We're playing serious politics in Guyana. Burnham said to those who were talking like we are about ballots and going to the motion of who's right and who's constitution. Burnham said, comrades, why you are reading on the line? In politics, you have to read between the lines, meaning you have to know what you want, and then you interpret what's on the line to give you what you want. This is an exercise of real, raw power. All we can do, ladies and gentlemen, and we've said this 30 years ago, when we put this Indian security dilemma on the agenda, I spoke personally, not to go back, and we can't change history, but just to say going forward, if we went to Dr. Jagan personally and said we have to have the forces in Guyana be representative of the population, and Dr. Jagan said, well, who's going to fix the seawall? We don't have money to do kind of thing. Well, 32 years later, we're still in the same mess. So if we're to go forward, and the only way PSU will get out is if America, let's call a spade, decides to the PPP will not be able to govern. In my article this week, last week, the week before, and the week before, I said this, the PPP will be in office, but they will not be able to govern until concomitantly it is put on the agenda that the state institutions must be representative of the peoples of Guyana, not only Indians, but Amerindians, mixed people, all Guyanese must be represented, where Mr. Granger as a leader will not almost be forced to make a decision, because when you give a person so much power into his hands, you're almost making his decision inevitable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ravi. And so we are going to open the floor for very brief questions and very, very brief responses so that we would have the maximum number of participation. So we have roughly about 45 minutes again for the meeting. So if you want to say something, just unmute your mic ask your question, make your comment or so, and then unmute again. Go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Mahabir. My name is Mike. I listened to Dev very carefully, and he outlined all the bases, how difficult it is, how this state is controlled by pro-PNC deep state factors. You might be in power. You might be in the seat of government, but you have no power. This is going to be, we are going around the mulberry bush. Is it not time to debate pro-union with the United States? It is time to take up that question. Let us speak it. Let's put it on the table. Let everyone debate it throughout the country. Thank you.
Yes, a brief response from any of the presenters?
I don't understand
Yes,
what the gentleman was
I would like
asking
to
about a
respond to that.
pro-union.
Can I go first or?
Yes, one
Yeah.
at a time.
Yes, I respectfully totally disagree with Mr. Ravi Dev because Guyana and the Guyanese have evolved. Today, it's not the same PPP as before. And Mr. Dev know that I'm not a supporter of the PPP. I support innovative new parties, and I have seen how the dispensation has changed. And forgive me the word, this racial thing in Guyana today is nonsense. You understand? It's only being peddled by a small group like Mr. David Hines and other racists. You understand, who want to stay in power because they are the new black elite. And it's not going to happen because decent Afro-Guyanese don't buy that nonsense anymore. And I'm on the ground. Today I was on the ground again. I spoke with the protesters, and those people are in doubt. That is why every time they organize a protest, it's less and less people. People want a strong economy that they can feel money in their pocket. No wonder that you speak with several GDF people I spoke to, several policemen I spoke to, and they're telling me bluntly their life was better on the PPP. And those are Afro-Guyanese. Coming to the question of whether we should be part of the American system, today I would say no problem. For one simple reason, that with what we have seen the EU, we have seen that when you have a larger economic group, you prosper faster, you're stronger, and you can do more things. But again, and you have to give Barnum and Eric Williams credit for that. Before the EU was the EU, they had already have this vision of CARICOM. The only thing is that we were too much of infighting now, and that is why I'm convinced that the whole equation has changed. Because if I see how CARICOM came out, I want to assure you that Mr. Granger and his cabal were shocked to see, because he expected his CARICOM friends to come to his aid, but they didn't, because in each one of those people country, democracy is developing. So the question, should we become the 53rd or 54th state of America? I would welcome it, because it doesn't matter who is in power. Together you're much stronger. Those false pride of being nationalistic, what we see the PNC is now calling for, all of them are parasiting. Their children are in America, making use of the free economy there and enjoying it. But peddling here local at home racism, this nonsense has to stop. And believe me, it is stopped. It's just a few days.
So you're taking
I'm sure the
yeah. So we are going to ask Ravi Dev to respond, and then we'll open the floor for questions again.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Dr. Doerga, when he says he disagrees absolutely with Ravi Dev, what aspect, Dr. Doerga. So maybe I can ask you clearly, do you disagree that the state institutions in Guyana are all controlled by the PNC?
Yes.
And Mr. Granger has augmented that in the last 5 years. Are you disputing that?
I agree with you on that. But the thing is that this is one of the disappointments I have with the PPP. they had enough time to adjust those things. And let me tell you, I'm comparing it with Suriname.
Now, I just want to have your answer. So let me answer now. So if you just if this is where we as a people, we don't understand politics. We're dancing all around the mulberry bush. You concede to me that Granger is in control of all the state institutions, which is what real power. Power is the ability to cause someone to do something, whether he wants to or not. And it is only the PNC in Guyana that can do that. And we can see it even in the judiciary, and we see it in GECOM, a so-called autonomous institution. So if these so-called autonomous institutions are towing the line for Mr. Lowenfield, I had long talks with Mr. Suraj Valley, who was the former GECOM chair. And he assured me that you could not cheat, you could not beat the system. It is foolproof. Personally assured me of Mr. Lowenfield's loyalty. But the point is, Mr. Doerga, in countries like Guyana, you have to face the facts. And when leaders make decisions, you look at what are called social facilitation factors or social inhibitory factors. And in Guyana, the factors that will make the PNC go in certain directions is the fact that they have these power centers under their control. The PPP cannot act like that. If the PPP was rigged out as they were in 2015, when Mr. Ramutar said 22 boxes were not counted and he protested, they had to use a petition. Why they had to use a petition? Because they did not have any of that state institution, but most importantly, they did not have the disruptive capacity for import Joshua, which is the capital. Enough.
Okay, thank you. And remember, the focus of this meeting tonight is what do we do if Granger does not step down? Vasant had called me on the phone, Ramracha, and also messaged me. He wanted to say something or ask a question, but please be brief, sir, because we have 57 participants and we want a wide number of participation. Unmute, you have to unmute, but I will do that for you. Yeah,
unmute.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead now, we're hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you, go ahead.
Okay, listen.
Be brief, please.
Okay, yes. Let's get some raw meat going on here. I am not a constitutional man. The constitutional people in India kept back India independence for 50 years. And all we hear in this constitutional talk, we don't have, what I'm saying, Indo-Guyanese do not have what you call a reciprocal fear. This is it all the saying they're depending on United States and Marines coming. The point is you have to provoke a situation. And as Ravi Dev say, you have to have a disruptive situation. You have to call attention. There's no news in England and America carrying on. It's taking up the issue of what is going on in Guyana because you do not have a reciprocal fear. All we are doing is going through the maze of African jurisprudence trying to fight our cause, and we cannot do this. And I am saying to you, Indo-Guyanese, if you want attention and you want America to come in, you have to find a way to call attention on yourself or go in Guyana, and I'll give you the answer for Guyana solution. Start talking about petition, and you will see how the Afro-Guyanese leadership will wake up to you. Start talking. If this is the game you all are playing, the PNC party, then we will start preparing the Indian minds for petition in Guyana. And I don't want to hear this nonsense about JDF and all of that, and we don't have that. First, prepare the Indian minds and to put out money. But we need to start preparing the Indian minds how to think politically different. So I'm saying to you, petition Guyana. Don't only provoke the situation, give them a reciprocal fear. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So we will take another question or comment from somebody else, and then one of the panelists can respond to Mr. Vasan. Any of
Mr. Moderator, you ask questioners to be, or respondents now, to be very short and
very
short.
short. Okay,
And
go ahead.
you know, they keep going on and on and on. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll take another question or comment or contribution, very short, and then we'll ask one of the presenters to respond. There was a Prasad who had his or her hand up. Do you want to speak now? Prakash, Prakash, yes.
Prakash, yes. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Dr. GIBRAN, RAVI DEV, both have very valid points. The fact that the United States has several newspapers have published already what's going on in Guyana regarding the intransigent sense of the current government shows that America knows. May I ask Dr. GIBRAN, in the spirit of urgency, what can be done to alert the US government to take some action? Keeping in mind that the ambassador is there, how do we get some actual demonstration similarly to what you have said? I would say this in the spirit of, I live about 8 miles from the White House and I wouldn't know how to start. Can you shed some light, sir? Thank you.
Yes, yes. So any one of the presenters, briefly?
Can I take this? Or
Yes.
Go ahead, doctor. Go ahead.
Professor GIBRAN.
Oh, sorry. I think it's a very good concern. The gentleman who, Prakash, who lived, who lives very close to the White House, you need to first bring this up to your representative, to the DC representative. And I know you don't have a senator or a congressman, but you do have a representative. But we need to get 1 or 2 strong senators, Republican senators, who have the ear of President Trump. All he has to do, if they to make that telephone call, and that this will boost his international image. This man will do anything to boost his international image. We have to play to his ego. That needs to be done. And as Ravi Dev, had mentioned a number of times, even on, even during his presentation this afternoon, we have to be very nimble in what we are doing and very forthright and be very cognizant of the role of hard power. Well, he used raw power. It's not in the literature, I mean, my literature. It's hard power, which is quantifiable, which is military power. This is what Granger understands. But it doesn't have to come to that. All it needs is for Trump to threaten to use hard power, and Granger will back down. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Joel, I think you wanted to say something?
Yeah,
BHAGWANDIN?
I wanted to say something along the same line because I've been reading the chat, the comments from some of the participants online. And in response to the same question, I agree with Dr. GIBRAN. You see, Guyana is not Venezuela. And while the momentum of all of us on this forum, and probably a lot of Guyanese, and I'm part of many chat forums, and I've seen a lot of people asking questions, well, the US should act now, what the US waiting for, we're getting too much statements, time for action. We gotta respect diplomacy. We got to respect that there are protocols. There's a process. We haven't had the declaration as yet. So there is no need at this point in time for any extreme measure by the US. We have to wait tomorrow. Tomorrow, at this point in time, we've already exhausted, in my opinion, the options of the court. Of course, I agree with Mr. Dave that you could always find ways, but the CCJ, I think, has given a very explicit guidance and ruling. And if they find another judge, if they find a favorable judge to go and find something else, then all the PPP has to do is to get the High Court. Let's assume they're going to bring an injunction. You have to have a basis for an injunction. All the PPP has to do is go to the High Court like they have done during the electoral period when they went and filed the other injunction with recount and what happened in District 4. They get a Chief Justice to reverse it. And so, you know, the options there are very thin at this point. What is left is for the declaration. We have seen the chairwoman has been consistent. She's been consistent. She's a retired judge. She's a reputable judge, and she knows what she has to do. And so it's hard for her to turn back. So at this point, we need to allow GECOM to meet tomorrow. And so if the commissioners don't turn up tomorrow, then the four of them would constitute the quorum. They have to decide at that meeting what are the other options going forward, which are catered for in law, and then they have to make a decision, and then get somebody to get a report and make the declaration, and then the swearing in ceremony follows thereafter. Now it is at that point when, assuming that Irfan Ali is declared and the swearing in ceremony is to be held, and the president refuses to concede, then is when now the US could now consider those other options, those other extreme options. And now let's put a different dimension to the equation on this whole scenario. Guyana is not Venezuela, and we got to recognize that this is beyond domestic politics. This is about global politics, and this is about geopolitics. All right. This region, which is, by the way, the America's backyard, as we say it, the South America, Latin America, the Caribbean region, this region is the future of a paradigm shift of global power, of opportunities where the global powers are shifting their investments and their agenda. So Russia is competing, China is competing, and the Americans are competing. In my mind, the Americans, the US, have recognized that the other bigger regions in the world economy are more volatile, for example, the Middle East. And so to stabilize South America and the Caribbean, it's easier. It will take less resources to stabilize this region, with the exception of Venezuela. Guyana is not Venezuela.
Okay, Joel, can we take a question?
No, let me finish. Give me a minute, let me finish. We have the weakest military probably in the world. So I agree with Dr. GIBRAN. All it takes is one phone call or one helicopter or one military airplane, and these guys would back out.
Good. Unless Ravi Dev wants to respond, we'll have another question, comment, or contribution.
I would want to respond.
But just be brief, please, because you have spoken already.
Because the sequence is that if after 4 people in GECOM become quorum and Ali is pronounced president, and they still don't want to move, then the next step is the United Nations. And then America, if they want to do it right, will ask the United Nations, ask them to help restore democracy. And that's how it goes. And then one phone call will be enough. It is not, I would be against that America go on their own. We are part of United Nations. Let's go the democratic way. And I'm convinced that you know, when you go that way, we won't have a bloodshed here. And I'm not afraid that Granger will be so stupid to start any bloodshed here, because this is not, as Guyanese say, not a long time, you know, people will defend themselves.
Okay, if Ravi Dev doesn't want to respond, we can get the next question,
It's
comment.
it's not a matter of response, but I think the discussion is finally moving forward, and we're coming to a point, which is what I just put it into simple terms, that what I think we're now agreeing that we have to remove the initiative from the PNC. Up to now, the PNC has been setting the agenda, and then all we're doing is to respond to their agenda. When you set an agenda, you're going to lose. When you follow an agenda, you're on the losing side already. So it comes back to what I said. Depending on the ruling, I'm predicting Granger will resort to the courts, right? It is arguable as to whether he'll succeed, but we also have, I feel that is what we'll do. So we'll see. Well, we have to have an answer as to what. That is where we, the Guyanese people, will have to play our part in standing up to when the PNC starts to act egregiously, even more than they have already, by now refusing to follow Claudia's declaration. We will have to stand up, and all of the forces in Guyana, the social forces, the economic forces, the political forces, will have to come together and stand up and be counted. I think we are reaching that moment. And I think at that point in time, you are giving the outside world reasons for intervening.
Thank you. Any question, comment?
I agree. I think Ravi Dev made some excellent points. And in particular, the point that he made that the PNC holds all the levers of government. And even if the PPP comes to power, there's still a significant problem of governing in fear with the army, etc. The other solutions that I heard are real long-term, going to United Nations, approaching President Trump. These things will play out and take a really long time. In the very short term, this is a general question, in the very short term, what that the Guyanese can do to blunt this the seizing of the levers of power that the APNU has.
Yeah. Okay. If you are done,
I can answer that.
Briefly, yes. Yeah.
I want to again say that this is not the Guyana of 10, 15 years ago. If Ravi is saying that, yes, we should change from while they are always taking the initiative to preempt things, I want to point out that it was the PPP and with the small parties who decided that, you know what, when the appeal court had decided that what they had to do, they didn't wait and they went to the CCJ. And I consider Anil Nandalal, the Data Dean, the most brilliant lawyers the Caribbean has. So for us, we are trying to avoid a bloodshed. And because of simple reasons that it can be avoided, because the Afro-Guyanese, although in majority in all the government institutions, they are Afro-Guyanese, and it grew like that, starting from Burnham. You understand? Afro-Guyanese are also educated today. Most of them are not racialist. And we can't close our eyes for that. And that the PPP didn't in the 23 years made sure that those institutions are balanced. Yes, I accuse them of failing there. So hopefully when they come back in power, the Afro-Guyanese will understand that if they want inclusiveness, because I don't believe in the nonsense of sharing the corn, it's about inclusiveness. I believe that I should be free to enjoy my culture how I want and the way I want it, but together we must have a strong economic country so everybody can prosper. So that is my position. And I think it's wrong if people think that Guyanese going to just sit by and wait for somebody to come and help us. That time is long gone, man. If I tell you what is happening on the ground, while they're protesting, the defenders of democracy in Guyana, trust me, that's a huge organization, is telling them, don't overstep your borders because this not long time.
Thank you. Anybody, new person, new face, new voice, question, comment, contribution? Unmute your mic and speak.
Hi.
Yeah.
My name is Michael Thakur. I'm actually just an observer. I happen to have been invited to this by Professor GIBRAN, who's a friend of mine. I live here in the States. I'm from Jamaica. And, you know, my experience working internationally tells me that, that there's some this issue appears to be shifting to a solution from external solutions. It has to be one that involves, I think, leveraging the OAS, the CARICOM, and other international allies or institutions that support democracy to get some of the big countries to ally with those who want to see real democracy in Guyana, for that to happen. I mean, we know in West Africa of several cases where the regional countries and agencies actually intervened militarily in Liberia to actually reinstate democracy. And you may well have a situation where you need a strong ally to help you, but you have to probably lead it within the region. I also think that you must leverage those who are involved in the oil sector, because to me, there are two elements in Guyana that are internationally important right now. One is its vast oil resources and the prospects for that globally, in terms of its own development and its own interaction with the world. And the second element is that Guyana, if there's a failure of the state democracy, it would be useful for a state like the United States to demonstrate that it can help to reinstate democracy and send a signal to a country like Venezuela that this is what we can do. So I think there's a lot to be gained in starting that process and moving along that path to find a solution. Those are my thoughts.
Hey,
Thank
Michael,
you.
Dr. Mojave, this is Cliff Rajkumar here. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I certainly agree with him. I think the leverage that we have to bring to bear, I think, in Guyana is the preservation of democracy. I think that when you look at the situation that we are seeing that has been playing out, that if Granger should succeed and become a rogue totalitarian regime, which for sure, if he usurps power and does not abide by the rules and the constitution, we can see that the country is going to slide into anarchy. And I think this is really where I think we have to wait until tomorrow and see what happens. And I think all of us that are, let's say, overseas, that do have some level of connection and the ability to leverage, whether it's our MP, our governments, and the people, to bring to their awareness what is happening in Guyana and how the geopolitics is going to play out and potentially have significant consequences to these countries also. Because the region in South America is very important, with Brazil and Guyana being basically adjunct to Brazil. It is very important that Guyana remains as a stable and entity. And I think we need to look into that. And I know most of your input has been, what is the way forward? And I tend to agree with Ravi. I think he may not remember, but I've had a conversation with him back, I think it was in 2003. And we had like a 4-hour discussion was organized for me to meet with him here in Toronto. And our discussion has centered around some of those prevailing issues which we are experiencing now, which was security and what has to be done, what needs to be done. Of course, I think there was a certain degree of neglect, but we cannot roll the clock of time back now. We must look forward and decide what can we do now? who can we bring some leverage, some pressure, and try to get their involvement, because I think the situation could deteriorate into a situation that would be very unpleasant. This is my belief. I think we need to be proactive in doing something meaningful.
Thank you. Yes. Let's just give Thomas Abraham from Gopio a chance, please.
Yeah, I'm chairman of the Global Organization of People of Indian Origin. The first time I'm attending this meeting, we were keeping track of the election in when it happened in March. We were all very busy with all our this pandemic thing throughout the world, many countries. But we were alerted again about 2 weeks back. So our executive council made a decision last Sunday to campaign on this. We were quite involved in from 89 to 92, 91, 92 when Dr. Jagan came to power. So we are going to meet again tonight, and we are going to issue a statement. Our 30 million diaspora has some clout in many countries, especially USA and UK. So basically our campaign would be to preserve the democracy, as well as see that transfer of power happens peacefully. So we will try to do whatever we can, but we are going to issue a statement today itself, preparing it and run it with our executive council and send it, and we will work with you guys, whatever way we can help you. I think we also need to influence Prime Minister Modi to reach out to President Trump to see how effectively something can be done. That's my thought.
Thank you, Dr. Abraham. I think Devanand Bhagwan wanted to say something.
I just want to say, first of all, Namaste, Dr. Abraham ji, Swagat hai, welcome to this forum. Very briefly, I would like to respond to Cliff Rajkumar's question, what can we do practically? And something that we can do, I would really encourage everyone here on this forum, is to contact the people who do have influence and to thank them and encourage them to continue to put pressure on the Granger government to concede. Some of these people would include the diplomats, the Canadian High Commissioner, the US Ambassador, and the EU, and so on, the UK, OAS, and of course the chairman of CARICOM. Contact these people through email, social media, various forms. It really does make a difference. And so, yeah, please take time to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other person? Just unmute your mic.
Yes, yes, Anthony Gajjar.
Yes, Anthony.
Yes.
Professor, yes. Renowned professor.
I was wondering what the panel thought about sanctions and other leverage that I see external powers have. I'm having some difficulty in understanding how is it that the regime in Georgetown could believe that it could sustain itself if it doesn't have the support of this region and the wider region, Latin America, as well as the United States. Because as I look at it, for instance, Guyana needs Brazil, for example, on the border question. It needs the United States in a whole number of areas. Okay, it needs the CARICOM region in some respects. So I'm having some difficulty in understanding how can the regime, even though I accept the idea of the regime having some concept of hard power and believe that because you control state institutions, you can dominate the society. But even so, you are constrained by a number of other things. You are constrained by external forces. You're also constrained by the fact that those who oppose you also control leverage. And I hear people speaking as though the rest of Guyana doesn't have leverage. But as I see it, for example, and even during the time that Burnham was there, they have a certain amount of economic power. They can be very disruptive if they decide to undertake a whole series of strikes and disobedience and so on. They can totally disrupt the whole society. So what I'm thinking is, how is it possible for a regime like that to sustain in power if half the society, and in this case, I believe, as the gentleman rightly said, in this case, it would be more than half the society, decides to lead a campaign of non-violence, and disruption against the regime, coupled with all the forces you have outside that I see are going to line up against the regime. How is that regime going to survive? I don't know. And this is why I kind of have reservations about the use of force. I don't think that is necessarily ready to stop these guys. I think the kind of sanctions that would come down on for example, how they're going to resist American sanctions. I mean, this would not only be American sanctions. The sanction would come probably from Brazil, Canada, all the rest of the Western powers. So I can't really see how they would be able to sustain the power. So all I'm saying is that I think even if, and I agree that the regime may probably attempt to keep the matter in court and try to, prolong themselves in power. But once you organize yourself in such a way, I fail to see how long they can stay in power. I think you might have to, I would advocate a much more non-military, a much more non-violent approach to this. And I believe that over time, probably within less than a year, I would think that that regime would not be able to stay in power. So I'd just like to get some feedback on this idea, because as I said, I'm having some problems in understanding.
If I might, Kumar.
Yes, but let me thank Professor Gonzalez, who is well-renowned, and it's an honor to have him in the meeting. Yeah, go ahead.
Professor Gonzalez asked two questions pretty much. Why will, now we have to understand, again, the nature of the leader of the PNC and how we can counter him. He asked a question, which I think if you were to think about it logically, what does Granger think, how long can he last? But that's the point I have been making for over a year, that Granger has made what we call a decision, and he's gambling for resurrection. When a leader gambles for resurrection, it is not a rational decision anymore. He just wants to keep the ball in play and hoping that the Americans will go along with the fait accompli, meaning that he will have the real politic in Guyana. He, in commanding all those institutions, he is the only one who can guarantee stability. You see, we forget that America wants a stable Guyana next door to Venezuela. And I think Granger can make an argument that the PPP cannot guarantee stability. I think that's a very important argument he can make, because everybody on this forum concedes that the command of the armed forces in Guyana is under the PNC. So that's one reason I think Granger is going along as he is. One, he's gambling for resurrection. He doesn't give a damn about the consequences, and he is just hoping to keep the ball in play. The second point, and this is where I want to come to a point, that yes, we expect, and ultimately somebody will have to pick up a phone like Mr. Granger, because this thing has gone all the way to Pompeo, Department of State head, and yet they have not buckled. It means this thing has to go higher. And this is where I feel, and I want to compliment the parties in Guyana, especially the smaller parties. They have done a wonderful job in checkmating, they think, the PNC in the courts. Yes, they've done that. And again, I predict if Claudette rules, as I think she will, they'll go back to the courts. So what we have to do in Guyana, Chinese people have to think outside of the box. And precisely how we do that, this is not the forum to talk about that, but we cannot keep playing to the script written by the PNC, which is to keep the matter in the courts, because we have gone all the way to Pompeo, and we need something more to shake the box for something to happen, so the PNC becomes discomforted, makes an error where there can be intervention.
Yes, thank you very much. We have just about 5 more minutes again before we close, and we want to give new faces, new voices, and so on. Tara Singh is here, and Steve Rowan. Rowan, just be brief because we have 5 minutes again.
Kumar, can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, I just want to make some comments. First of all, in relation to Dr. Doerga, I'm not talking about strategic moves now to be made by the PPP, but I do agree with Dr. Doerga that the PP has taken some initiatives are not necessarily reactionary. Now, the PNC has been carrying this narrative based on 2 wings. One, as Dr. Durga said, the killing of 400 black men and the marginalization of black people in Guyana. Now, we know that, as Dr. Durga said, is false. Actually, the 420 black men included 117 Indians who were killed, and they include Indians in that group. That's one. Two, the marginalization. The most marginalized group in Guyana are the Amerindians. They're about 76% poverty level among the Amerindians. So that is one thing to be considered. The other thing is that people from outside, they can be intellectuals, professors, etc. They can make appeal, but you can only appeal to somebody on moral grounds if they have a conscience, if they have a superego. But if they don't have that, any type of appeal will be a waste of time. You know, 2 days ago, Professor Hilary Beckles, who is the Vice Chancellor of the University of West Indies and Chairman of the CARICOM Reparations Committee, he said that with the decision of the Caribbean Court of Justice, people in Guyana, the air will become purer and the darkening clouds would have dissipated. While I'm afraid neither of those have happened and will happen shortly. You see the trouble, and despite him and Sir Sridhar Ramphal, all of them exhorting Granger to concede, and he's not listening to them. And I agree with most of the speakers, like Ravi Dev and others, who say that the time has come where we got to get intervention, but I don't agree with military. As I said, that one phone call from President Trump can get this thing done. But at the same time, I want to be optimistic. I still will say, let's wait on the GECOM decision tomorrow and I strongly believe if at that time, if President Irfan Ali is declared a winner and Granger make any move, then the sanctions will be applied at both individual and national level later. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I understand there are requests on the chat here for Steve Rowan to make a comment or ask a question if he's so willing.
I am. Good evening, everyone from London. My involvement in Guyana and my I suppose circle of opinion comes from the investment community, the international investment community, and there was already a lot of investment momentum for Guyana in the run up to the election. The situation now has basically put a hold on that, notwithstanding the COVID-19 situation. And what the international investment community wants is a stable, legitimate government and a government they can do deals with. And there are two problems now with the situation. One is that Granger and co, by their actions, have shown that they're not people who can be trusted, who you can do a deal with, that would hold any credibility with their own investment groups. And the other thing is, even investors look to make a return, even if there was a coup d'etat and the military were involved. It's also widely recognised that the GDF is a very weak military that has never really fought in anger, and the perception in the investment community is Granger would not be able to hold on to power in a military sense, which again makes a weak situation for investors. And all that unfortunately does is keeps the money out of Guyana and keeps the projects out of Guyana. And the Americans, for all the bluster about supporting democracy, they don't really care who the government is. All they care about is what's in Exxon's best interest and what's in the investment community's best interest, and that clearly leans towards a PPP government rather than a now discredited Granger government. But until this is resolved, there's a huge amount of investment benefit that could be coming to Guyana that's just going to sit on the outside, because they're not going to risk their investment capital when they just with a government that's likely to face sanctions, and where any deal they do for land or government contracts could be undone in 6 months' time. So it's that investment block is also a loud voice in amongst the high commissioners and the international community, etc. And I think it's probably important that, you know, that although there isn't a cohesive face to that investment group, that is still part of the stakeholder community for Guyana that should be engaged with. And typically, you know, the Indo-Guyanese community tends to be the more entrepreneurial community, and most of the businesses and the you know, the economic force within Guyana is also from the Indo-Guyanese community. So that's quite a strong group that needs to come into this discussion, because that also puts pressure, not necessarily on Granger, but it puts pressure on America to make sure that there's a stable government in place.
Thank you very much. So we'd have a final comment or question from Ashok Motwani, from the editor of Diaspora Times. He has indicated that he wants to say something. Are you there? Just unmute your mic and proceed.
Hi, thanks. I already sent my comment in your private message box.
Okay.
And if that can be addressed, I'll be very happy. Just keep our High Commissioner in the loop, and please make sure that whatever actions you are taking, we wish you very best and support. And the direction should be towards zero violence. If you can take care of that aspect, I think. And
right.
we really appreciate your initiatives.
Thank you. Unless there is one burning question or comment or contribution, we want to close now. Okay, so this brings us to the end, and we have this forum every Sunday at 7:30 Trinidad time. And we want to thank everybody for participating, particularly the presenters. We really want to move to Trinidad in the next Sunday and talk about race, religion, and politics in Trinidad and Tobago, because we have elections coming up in about a month time, August 10th. And we definitely cannot be based in Trinidad and not address this pressing matter. It's campaign season now, so we want to talk about the politics in Trinidad. I'd like all of you to send your emails, which is at the bottom of the invitation, and your WhatsApp. We want to have a database so we can continue to invite you and have your attendance and participation. We are very grateful that you have taken the sacrifice and the time and so on to be with us, especially people who live in different time zones. So thank you very much for participating, and this brings us to the end. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.